Our girl is Chao Shan, a truly controversial figure. Kind-hearted and captivating, yet rebellious, never letting anyone take her rights, and always taking revenge on those who hate her. But she has been extremely unlucky since birth. When she was born, superstition was widespread and easily believed, and her aunt-in-law, who deeply hated Chao's mother, wanted to harm her using those beliefs. She entered the room during the delivery and convinced the great-grandmother that the child to be born must be raised inside the house and never leave it, knowing that the parents would soon leave for war. This way, she hoped to separate the newborn from her parents. But unfortunately for her, the mother gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. So, she decided to take the boy with her to war alongside her husband, while leaving Chao to be raised at home with the grandmother and the aunt-in-law. Thus, the wicked woman's plan failed. She could not separate the child from her mother, and instead, she and the grandmother became responsible for raising the girl, which made them despise her even more. Chao noticed their resentment and refused to accept injustice or hatred, showing the same fierce defiance her mother had. This pushed them to send her to a poor rural village, hoping it would tame her. There, she lived a harsh, miserable life, always sick and uncared for, as everyone secretly wished for her death. One day, the grandmother was shocked when her son finally returned with his wife. Fearing they would discover what she had done to their daughter and punish her severely, she ordered that the girl be brought back to the manor at once and sent men to retrieve her. On the way back, the army commanders stopped their carriage searching for a fugitive thief, someone who was in fact a relative of the grandmother and had been hiding in her house. He asked whether they had seen him, and everyone denied it, of course, but Chao, without hesitation or concern, pointed straight to his hiding place, a rebellious act and a form of revenge against her grandmother. The commander was impressed by her boldness. When she returned to the manor, she met her parents, who had been away from her for many years. The moment they saw her condition, they broke down, unable to believe what the grandmother had done to her. The grandmother pretended to be weak and even fainted to cover her actions. But Chao was far sharper. She feigned exhaustion as well, to pull the attention away from the grandmother, challenging her with cunning and wit. After that, the army commander, Lin, arrived to thank her father on her behalf for handing over their fugitive relative. When the grandmother learned that Chao was the reason he had been caught, her hatred deepened, while the girl enjoyed having given her a taste of her own cruelty. But unfortunately for Chao, these spiteful acts did not please her mother, who saw her as an ill-mannered girl. And she was right, for Chao had never received proper upbringing. So her mother decided to raise her anew, beginning a new chapter in the girl's suffering. The next day, despite her anger, the mother took a wooden ruler and went to Chao to take her measurements and make her new clothes, only to find her eavesdropping on her grandmother and father. The mother grew furious, remembering the girl needed discipline, and seized a stick to beat her. Chao was deeply hurt, as her first reunion with her mother after years ended with punishment. And unfortunately, her mother never told her that she had originally taken that stick only to measure her for new clothes. And even if she had known this, it would not have softened her mother's harshness. Chao decided to avenge herself, for she had pride and refused injustice. She went to her aunt-in-law and convinced her that if she stayed in the main wing with her husband, she would bear him a son. The aunt-in-law clung to the idea and refused to give up the main wing to Chao's parents, telling the family matriarch that the fortune teller had said bearing a son required her to live in the main quarters. She vowed never to leave until she conceived. Chao's mother was furious, for she and her husband had the right to stay there, and even angrier when she learned that this trick was her daughter's doing. As usual, she scolded and humiliated her. A few days later, the emperor decided to reward Chao's parents for the wars they had fought over the years. His gift to them was a promotion for her father and a very large manor that everyone agreed to move into. The amusing thing was that her aunt-in-law longed to move with them, but she could not. Chao's mother mockingly reminded her that she must remain in the main wing as she had decided in order to bear her son. Unfortunately, the aunt realized the entire matter had been planned by Chao and felt she had been deceived from the beginning. She went to scream at the girl for what she had done, but Chao refused to accept such behavior and did not give her the chance. So the aunt-in-law poured her anger on her husband instead, humiliating him as she always did. This incident became the cause of major changes in the family. Chao's mother intervened and saved the man from his wife. After a long conversation, he decided to divorce her and expel her from the family. Chao was delighted, for it was well-deserved revenge. This woman had been the reason she was separated from her mother at birth. They indeed got rid of the aunt, and the uncle also left, leaving their daughter Yan alone in the house. Yan was Chao's age, but unlike Chao, quiet and well-behaved. It was agreed that Chao's parents would raise her alongside Chao. Chao did not expect how bad this would be. Her mother began treating Yan far better than her own daughter, to the point where she criticized everything Chao did and compared her to her cousin, which irritated Chao. Her mother's attention toward Yan increased, and Chao's brothers, who had recently returned, noticed and became upset that their sister was neglected, lacking even basic things like a table. One brother told her he would get her one, and when he did, Chao sent her maid to fetch it. A pointless conflict arose. When Yan's maid saw the table, she said she wanted to take it to her room so Yan could see it first, and if she liked it, she would have one made. Chao's maid foolishly agreed, but the other maid tricked her, locked her in a room, and stole the table. When Chao's maid realized the deception, she ran out and confronted her. Chao arrived to defend her maid, but her mother rushed in and scolded Chao, assuming her maid was wrong. When the truth came out and everyone learned the other maid was to blame, the mother still refused to reprimand Yan and punished both maids instead. Chao was upset, for she had been scolded, and even when the truth appeared, her rights were not restored. But she was used to such behavior and knew her mother was entirely biased toward Yan, that her sense of justice was nothing but a facade. She embarrassed her in front of everyone, saying she was not as fair as she claimed, but favored Yan under the name of justice. She left the place upset, and in the end, they decided to let the matter pass. Later that evening, they went to attend the festival. It was the first festival Chao had ever gone to, having been locked away most of her childhood. Instead of making up for that and explaining things to her, her mother irritatingly took Yan with her, greatly angering Chao, though she tried not to show it. When they arrived, they found a huge crowd. People were solving riddles to win lanterns. Chao liked the idea of getting a lantern and solved the riddle easily, surprising Yuan, the man who had written it, so he gave her a gift. But right at that moment, a loud commotion broke out. She ignored the gift, handed it back to Yuan, and hurried toward the source of the noise. She found that the princess, a relative of the royal family, was pretending to drown in the lake so Commander Lin, the one who caught the thief at the beginning of the story, would save her. But Chao realized the princess was faking it just to draw attention, and she was annoyed, for she hated such cheap theatrics. So she decided to punish the princess. With cunning and mischief, she pushed a young man standing beside her into the water, exposing the truth. The water was shallow, and the princess could stand and swim perfectly well. No one noticed this except Commander Lin, who was greatly impressed and grew fond of the girl's cleverness. He watched her throughout the festival. Suddenly, a fire broke out in one of the lantern houses near Chao, but Lin was there. Without hesitation, he saved her quickly and disappeared before speaking to her. The next morning, her father took her with him to the palace where another celebration was held. Chao was irritated by the crowd, so she wandered off alone. Yuan, whom she recognized as the riddle maker from the previous night, appeared and asked her for a favor, to deliver a certain message to his family. She refused at first, but he kept jumping in front of her until she was forced to accept and deliver it. The next day, she found that the family had been invited to the birthday of the same princess who had pretended to drown. She attended reluctantly, knowing she would meet a group of girls who hated her for no reason. But she found one girl who liked her, the daughter of the manor's owner, and learned she had grown up with her brother. She supported Chao, but that did not stop the other girls from mocking her. They even said hurtful things, claiming she lacked proper upbringing because her parents had abandoned her. Their words stung because they were true. So she decided to anger them all, claiming that Commander Lin loved her and followed her everywhere. The plan worked. The girls fell silent, jealous. As she stood to leave after getting her revenge, she was shocked to find Commander Lin himself standing before her. Embarrassed, she asked, "Who are you?" He mocked her, saying he was the one who loved her and followed her everywhere, just as she had claimed. She felt ashamed, and the entire room was stunned. The funny thing was that she did not know Lin had already fallen in love with her from the first moment he saw her. He had not intended to attend the birthday party, but when he learned Chao would be there, he changed his mind, gathered his men, and rushed over just to see her. He watched her the whole day, while she was busy looking for her cousin Yan, who had been tricked by two girls, pushed into the water, and was about to be beaten. But Chao, as cunning as ever, caught them and beat them severely, even allowing herself to take a light hit so it would look like a mutual fight. As usual, she acted before everyone as though she had been wronged, claiming the girls tried to push both her and Yan into the water. The girls denied everything and called her a liar, and everyone was about to believe them until Commander Lin suddenly stepped in and proved they had indeed planned to harm Chao. So the two girls were punished. But Chao knew her mother was unfair and would punish her anyway for getting into trouble, even if she was right. She panicked, but her brother advised her to stay out of the house until her mother calmed down, so she left immediately. Outside, she found Yuan with his cart, and he decided to take her to her friend's manor. As soon as she arrived, she saw Lin pass by. He had not planned to stay, but upon seeing her, he changed his mind, decided to join them for dinner, and even chose to spend the night there for her sake, clearly deeply in love. The next morning, Lin saw her on horseback, clumsily unable to control the horse that ran wildly and nearly threw her off. Lin intervened immediately and saved her. And since he had rescued her, he asked a favor in return, to bring him a certain map. She agreed to help and indeed found it for him. Although he could have obtained it himself, he simply wanted an excuse to speak with her. He returned home afterward, and she returned to her family, pretending to regret the chaos she had caused in order to avoid punishment. She succeeded, but she did not forget the girl's insults and decided to avenge herself, for she never accepted harm without response. She seized the chance when she was invited to another gathering at her friend's father's manor, where she found all the girls present. She slipped over to Commander Lin and asked him to repay her for the help she had given him. He welcomed the idea and agreed. He sat down and pretended to laugh loudly to attract the girls. The more he laughed, the closer the girls came, trying to catch his attention until they all gathered on the bridge. Chao had prepared the bridge in advance to collapse. The girls all fell together into the water, looking ridiculous, and Chao achieved her revenge. The idea was excellent, but unfortunately the Lord's wife did not like it. Although she respected Chao's cleverness, she told her son to inform Chao's family that their daughter caused the incident because they needed to know she was irresponsible. the son delivered the message. Chao's mother felt triumphant, believing she could finally punish her daughter. A sad thing indeed. But Chao's father decided to intervene. He agreed with his daughter that she would apologize to her mother and pretend to regret it, and before her mother began punishing her, he would step in and protect her from harm. Chao agreed, but at the moment of execution, she could not apologize or fake remorse. She stood firmly and insisted she had done nothing wrong. Her mother then decided to punish her seriously. The beating was military level, harsher than what soldiers endured. She bore it all. The physical pain was not what hurt her. It was her heartbreak over her mother's cruelty. Her father broke down when he saw her in that state, and he decided to take her away from her mother, since she clearly did not know how to treat her and only harmed her. He learned that his uncle had been appointed governor of a distant city and offered to send Chao with him to live there. And so she left, sad, accompanying her uncle, without even saying goodbye to her mother, not knowing that her mother was hiding in a distant carriage, watching her leave. She set off with the rest of the convoy when suddenly a young man chased after them. It turned out to be Lu, whom she had seen with his fiancé at the festival. He had fallen for her at first sight. Chao seemed to have a captivating aura, despite her bad luck and rebellious nature. He told her that his fiancé had left him and become engaged to someone else, so he seized the chance to follow Chao and cling to her throughout the journey. She told him she did not know him at all and asked him to stay away, but he refused and stayed glued to her the entire way. When they reached the city, they noticed its appearance was strange. Her uncle felt uneasy and refused to risk their safety. He said he would enter alone and that the rest must return without argument. As they were heading back, a group suddenly attacked for no reason. Luckily, Chao was surrounded by soldiers her mother had secretly assigned to accompany and protect her. They succeeded in defending her, but unfortunately, her aunt-in-law was injured, and they had to carry her quickly to the nearest camp for shelter. There, it was not long before the same group attacked again. But this time, Chao used her wits and came up with a plan to stop them, and the plan succeeded. But there were losses. The enemies came dangerously close and were about to capture Chao, but one of her maids rushed forward and sacrificed herself, getting kidnapped in Chao's place. Chao fell into despair, overwhelmed by guilt and fear for the girl, wondering what they might be doing to her now. In the meantime, Commander Lin was leading his forces toward her uncle's city, which was under attack by the same group that had assaulted Chao. The uncle's decision to enter alone proved wise, because the attack on the city was brutal. The old governor was killed, and the rebels nearly slaughtered everyone. Fortunately, Lin arrived just in time to save them. Once he caught his breath, he learned that Chao was nearby and also under attack, so he rushed to her at full speed. When he arrived, he found her safe, tending to wounded soldiers, so he smiled and asked her to treat him too, clearly using any chance to get close to her. He was thrilled to be near her, but she paid him no attention. All she could think about was avenging herself on those who had attacked her and kidnapped her maid, especially after being told the girl had been cut to pieces. Rage filled her, and she longed to kill them herself. She asked to stay and watch the execution of the prisoners Lin had captured, but he refused, thinking the brutality would scare her. Naturally, she ignored him and snuck in anyway. But when she saw him killing them and watched the blood spill, she was terrified of him, and he noticed instantly, hiding his sword. Lin had come because he knew the emperor was passing through, and these bandits were actually rebel soldiers leading a coup. He made sure Chao was safe and was relieved. Soon after, her uncle arrived with Lu. Chao assumed he had fought rebels too, which explained his delay, but the truth was unexpected. The soldiers said they hadn't seen even the shadow of a thief on the road. His real problem was fainting every 5 minutes from weakness and stress. Chao thought life was strange. She almost died repeatedly that day, while her uncle crossed the same places without seeing a single sword. When the danger passed, the uncle headed again toward the city he was assigned to govern. It was devastated. Lin had saved most people, but they had still lost their families, leaving them hopeless. Many wounded even refused medicine. Only the late governor's granddaughter remained optimistic. Despite losing her entire family and suffering broken ribs, she insisted on drinking her medicine. Chao stepped in, shouting that giving up made their loved ones' sacrifices meaningless. They should keep living and honor the dead by surviving. The people began to rally, taking their medicine, and she helped rebuild the city with her carpentry skills until it slowly revived. Days later, they held a funeral for the old governor. Lin attended, but something disturbed him deeply. He saw how close Lu was to Chao, close enough to confess his love, and shockingly, she accepted. Lin was crushed. The only girl he had ever loved had slipped away before he could even confess. He returned heartbroken to the emperor, who treated him like a son. Realizing the cause of his sadness, the emperor decided to separate Chao from Lu, intending to marry her to Lin, but he grieved at the thought of pulling her from the man she loved. The emperor did not know that Chao's family opposed Lu in the first place, especially her mother, who was angry that Chao had not informed them about her engagement. She believed Lu was entirely unsuitable, as his character was weak compared to Chao's, and his family was extremely harsh. He would not be able to protect her or secure her rights. But Chao was unconvinced by her mother's words. She asked Lu to request that his family send engagement gifts to her father's house, which nearly drove her mother mad. Her father, however, began to believe they might be compatible, especially since her daughter was happy, though he still felt something was missing. A few days later, Chao's father took the family to the city gate, only to find the guards blocking entry, requiring a permit. As they were about to return, Commander Lin appeared and ignored everyone but her, letting them through immediately. He even walked with them to their destination. His behavior made her family suspicious, so they confronted her, asking about their relationship. She replied indifferently that she had met him only a few times and did not care whether he loved her. She wanted Lu and had agreed to him. She explained that she did not want a military husband like her father, who spent his life at war and was often absent. She preferred a quiet life with a kind man who loved her, even if she did not love him back. She took the first steps toward marriage by visiting Lu's family. There, she realized her mother had been right. Lu and his mother were treated terribly by the matriarch, who clearly disliked Chao. But Chao did not care. She saw it as a challenge and believed no one could stand in the way of her marriage. On the way back, Lin saw her and offered to escort her. Noticing her engagement ring, he asked about it. She said she was coming from her fiancé's house, where wedding preparations had begun. Lin's face fell in exhaustion and sorrow, but he escorted her anyway. Interestingly, Lin was not the only admirer. Yuan, the educated riddlemaster, was also captivated by her. When he learned her family sought a tutor for her siblings, he immediately offered his services and convinced them she should learn with them. He spent the day flattering her, hoping to catch her attention, unaware that her cousin was interested in him, just as Lin had been interested in Chao without her knowing it. Days later, Lin learned that the emperor planned to send a gift to Chao via her fiancé.
He asked that a decree be added to praise her and elevate her status publicly. The emperor wrote such kind words that Chao doubted they were meant for her. When she went to receive the decree, she tripped and fell on him. He tried to steady her, but she blushed and stepped away quickly. Lin requested a farewell as he was leaving for war and told her his return was uncertain, wishing to confess his feelings. She explained it would not work because she did not want a military man. Suppressing his sorrow, he promised to overcome his feelings, and they parted. Lin went to war, and surprisingly, it was against the husband of Lu's former fiancée, the same woman who had abandoned him at the festival. She had married someone else, unfortunately cruel and savage, who manipulated her into leaving Lu. At the wedding, he betrayed her with all her family present because they refused to oppose the emperor. Lin intervened in time, saved her, and defeated the villain, but her entire family had perished. Yet her father's will had expressed hope that she would marry her former fiancé, Lu. But Lu was now engaged to Chao. So what will happen next? When Commander Lin returned with the will, people were divided. Some said it was fine for Lu to marry her, while others objected, asking how that could be when he was Chao's fiancé. Chao herself disagreed. She felt pity for Lu, who did not love his former fiancé, because she constantly humiliated and mocked him. When Lu learned the news, he was shocked, and being cowardly, tried to run away. But he was clumsy, and his family easily caught him. The matriarch, who did not respect him, told him it would be fine to break off his engagement with Chao and marry his former fiancée instead. For the first time, he replied firmly that he would not. Lu asked Chao to accompany him to meet his former fiancée and persuade her to reconsider, but she refused to meet him. She decided to meet Chao alone and led her to a place, the prison, where she wanted to witness the execution of her evil husband who had destroyed her family. There, she did not just watch, she decided to carry out the execution herself. The scene was brutal, and Chao almost screamed until Commander Lin arrived and covered her face so she would not see. He realized Lu's former fiancé was trying to hurt Chao by forcing her to witness the execution. After Chao left, he approached the woman, explaining that he understood her suffering and grief, but Chao bore no blame and had no right to be punished in such a way, as she was not responsible for the deaths of her family. The girl became furious and shouted at Chao that Lin himself loved and cared for her, yet she desired Lu, her fiancé. Chao realized there was no hope of persuading the girl to abandon Lu. When she returned, Chao made a difficult decision. The engagement had to be broken. She went to Lu's family and told them so. Lu felt betrayed and reminded her of their vows, but she recounted what had happened to his former fiancé's family, how she had seen them die before her eyes, and that her own sacrifice in breaking the engagement was nothing compared to the suffering of that girl. He was convinced and agreed to cancel the engagement. The girls in the city could not comprehend the story and mocked her whenever they saw her, claiming her fiancé had left her for his former fiancé. Irritated, Chao decided to take a walk. She entered a building in the forest and overheard people conspiring against the crown prince. She ran, and they heard her, expecting to kill her. But as usual, Commander Lin appeared, hid her, and ordered her not to tell anyone what she had heard or that she had entered the place. When they returned, the emperor noticed their absence and asked what had happened. They lied, saying Chao had nearly fallen from a cliff and Lin had saved her, which reopened an old wound. The emperor realized Lin loved her and decided to help him gain her, asking her to visit his house to check on his injury. Chao went with her father to Lin's house to thank him. Upon seeing him, both father and daughter were awed by his strong presence and decided to leave quickly. On the way out,
the guards asked her father to leave while Chao returned to Lin. There, the princess who liked Lin had come to visit him, along with the crown prince and some girls who hated Chao. They spoke of her disdainfully, saying she had no right to come to the commander's house and should remember her place. But Lin suddenly intervened, silencing them all, telling them that they were the ones who should not forget themselves. He declared this his house and that they were unwelcome, expelling them all for Chao's sake. When the news reached the emperor, he wanted to help Lin win Chao even more, so he began bringing Chao and her family closer to him, inviting them to the imperial palace. Her mother gave her 10 strict instructions on how to behave calmly before entering, which Chao followed. Despite the unusual situation, her charm made the emperor and empress laugh, and they allowed her and her family to attend the feast. Unfortunately, all the girls were there, filled with envy, and they agreed to humiliate her. But Commander Lin suddenly appeared, foiling their plan. Not only that, he took her hand and seated her beside him among the men, ignoring all rules and customs. The emperor was impressed by his boldness, and even more surprised when Lin formally proposed marriage to her in front of everyone. Not only was her father shocked, Chao herself was stunned, and the girls nearly fainted from rage. Even the princess who adored Lin swooned in shock.
Chao's mother, seeing this, feared for her daughter entering the imperial palace and publicly scolded her. How could her daughter marry Lin? She had received no proper upbringing. She began insulting Chao to prove she was unfit for marriage. Naturally, this infuriated Chao, who decided to rebel as usual, refusing injustice. She accepted the proposal in front of everyone and told the emperor so. The emperor asked Lin, who said that if he did not marry her, he would never marry anyone. The girl's envy grew, and Chao was astonished at how deeply he loved her. When she returned home, her family went completely mad. They told her Lin's family was not easy. His uncle had been a military commander close to the emperor, but had been killed along with his entire family. The only survivor was Lin, saved by his mother, who fled with him. When she returned a year later with Lin to her husband, she found he had married her cousin, whom she had considered a younger sister. This shocked and enraged her mother, and since then, Lin had hated his father and stepmother. The emperor decided to raise him himself among his sons, making him his favorite. The imperial family was indeed intimidating, and Chao, realizing this, feared entering their world and considered retreating. Lin, however, was delighted that she agreed. He sent engagement gifts with a trusted man, the grandfather of the princess who loved him but whom he ignored. Because the princess loved Lin, she tried to convince her grandfather to ruin the marriage, but he refused, delivering the gifts in full. This angered the princess to the point of threatening to kill herself. Lin mockingly told her not to be foolish and contemplate suicide for a man, though she remained sad. When the girls saw Chao happy, they mocked her again, claiming she had quickly moved on after her first engagement and must have had a secret affair with Lin despite her engagement. Lin himself intervened, frightening them all. He then exposed the girl who had spread the rumor, publicly mocking her father for being addicted to young concubines, sarcastically asking what she would name a daughter if one were born. While most girls might feel happy knowing their fiancé always supports and defends them, Chao reacted differently. She was angry, feeling she had no voice, and that people respected her only because he showed up. She grew frustrated, especially as he forced himself into her family, making everyone wake up at dawn for military training, applying everything he had learned to get close to them. Chao grew exhausted by him. Once he left, she went to her friend to drink a little, only to be surprised by Lin again, who carried her home and stayed by her side all night, caring for her. The next morning, she did not realize what he had done and complained that he pressured her, that he did not love her as she was and wanted to change her like her mother. She confessed that she was uncomfortable and would live better without him.
Lin was deeply hurt and decided to distance himself. But when Chao realized all he had done for her during the night and remembered every time he had stood by her, even when she was wrong, she felt she had acted hastily and wronged him. She ran to him, wanting to tell him they must be together. But would she reach him? That is the question. Here ends the first part of the series. Subscribe to the channel to receive part 2. Don't forget to hit the like button and activate the notification bell to get all updates.